The Secret of the Plumed Serpent, page 215. The Lineage of the Theses. In Daniel Silver's house, on the wall of the healing room, there hung a framed image of the spinal column, labeled with well-known anatomical terminology. In addition, next to each vertebra, there was an enigmatic corresponding handwritten inscription, giving its name in the native language. Those inscriptions were a kind of secret among the healers. Daniel Silva called the diagram the staircase to heaven, and she said it represented the ranks of her lineage. Their meaning remained unexplained, and the writing had become an unbearable mystery which made me bite my fingernails in curiosity. During my time as assistant, I was taught to regard the spinal column as the center of a person's health. In fact, my instruction in the art of healing was based on the 33 steps of health and the well-being of the humans. According to the tradition of the Theses, as they used to call the physicians of antiquity, the steps corresponded to the vertebrae, each of them with its own lessons and tests presented to the healer's assistant during his apprenticeship. I had to know and learn about each of them. First, they taught me their anatomy as it is taught in school. Years later, when I had sufficiently advanced in the cult of the plumed serpent, the secret teachings of the spinal column were revealed to me. Alluding to the drawing of the spinal column, Don Melchior once said, "The Theses used the scheme of the stairs to move the energy from one center to another, and that was the rule for them." According to Sears, we have 8 principal centers. The rule says one must start from the bottom, from the first center, pass on to the second, and carry on successively until one reaches the last of the steps. That is how one discovers seeing. The energy climbs up the spinal column, ban, center by center, until one reaches the full potential that we as luminous beings are destined for. "Where does the energy move to?" asked one of the assistants. "As we have previously seen," Don Melchior replied, "for humans, only sexual energy exists. It can be wasted the way ordinary people waste it, or it can be accumulated and transmuted to other levels. The challenge is to transform that energy, moving it from one center to another until it has come round full circle." That was the goal of the Theses of antiquity. Not having achieved integration, they tried to make the energy come round full circle in pairs, which is the reason Theses always come in pairs. "How does one move energy from one place to another?" I asked. "By undergoing training in the way of the Theses. Among other things, That training includes the exercise of visualization of the progress of energy from one center to another. Those steps can take years to complete, although cases are known of warriors whose centers opened very fast. It follows that, for the believers, the intent of reaching the awareness of Quetzalcoatl, or the awareness of the plumed serpent, is, like I said before, a specialized movement of the assemblage point, where the warrior, by means of unbending intent, takes his assemblage point beyond the limits of luminous egg. As he does that, the luminous egg stretches and turns into a thin line of light, with the assemblage point at one end like the head of a rattlesnake. For an external observer, that vision resembles a luminous serpent floating in the sky. The serpent people, as they are sometimes called, were warriors who have carried out that maneuver. Alone, in a pair, or in group, they managed to stretch the luminous egg until it became a line of light. They are the sorcerers who have reached the level of the plumed serpent, and they externally travel on the ocean of awareness as a community of explorers who were once human like us. The goal of those warriors was to join their two extreme points, to bite their own tail and form a circle. But try as hard they might, they never managed to attain their goal. However, new generations of seers arose, who, continuing with the tradition, hit upon the idea of trying to do it in pairs. In this particular sorcerer's intent, one bites the tail of the other, thus forming a huge circle of energy, an enormous assemblage point. This time they achieved their goal. The maneuver made it possible for the participants to raise their awareness to unthinkable levels. That is the great secret of the lineage of Theses. The lineage of the healers has, after a fashion, followed their ancestral tradition, although in a modified form, as they currently don't turn themselves into lines of light. They have, nevertheless, maintained the tradition of the circular form. The rule for the circular parties of warriors. Once I accompanied Don Melchor on a trip to Mexico City to deliver a small sack containing a rare medicinal herb he had been keeping for a friend, a Sonora market trader. From there, we walked through the streets of the city center to visit the pyramid of Tlaloc, the god of rain and hurricanes, located within an underground station. Amid the bustling river of people who flowed in waves, we came to the sacred place of the ancients. Don Melchor showed me symbols on the monument which I would never have noticed without his help, and explained what we were looking at was just the top of the pyramid, and that its body remained buried under the structure of the station. "What does that mean?" I asked. The serpent that encircles the pyramid corresponds to the element water. The four-pointed pyramid means the element earth. The round structure that's located at the top corresponds to the element air, and the roof, which was usually a flimsy structure built of sticks and straw, relates to the element fire. So let me repeat that again. The serpent that encircles the pyramid corresponds to the element water. The four-pointed pyramid means the element earth. The round structure located at the top corresponds to the element air, and the roof, which was usually a flimsy structure built of sticks and straw, relates to the element fire. There, on the spot and in the midst of the crowd, he explained only the apex of this pyramid was round. Answering my question, he said, few round-topped pyramids remained in existence, but that there were still sorcerers who followed practices associated with them. From there, we walked through a long tunnel with its book market until we got to the Zocalo, where we visited the sculpture of Kiyosaki. Don Melchor said that the stone, upon which maidens used to be dismembered, was the symbol of death. I didn't know if that was true or not, but I felt the panic of those girls in the pit of my stomach. In my imagination, I could see what used to happen in that place. I told Don Melchor I wanted to get out of there. He agreed and said I was open enough for what was coming next. I wanted to know what he meant, but he put a finger to his lips to indicate we should be silent. He pointed at something in the sky high above the cathedral. At first, I saw nothing, but then something adjusted itself, and my eyes took in what he was indicating. It was a black shadow of deformed and sinister appearance, floating like a giant balloon over the buildings. I immediately grabbed Don Melchor's arm. He told me to calm down and not show fear or surprise. He called it the shadow, but I knew what it was I was seeing. That shadow, as he referred to it, was neither more nor less than one of the flyers Carlos Castaneda spoke about. That was the first time I had ever seen one. Trembling from head to toe, I felt nauseated and vomited. Don Melchor kindly took care of me and said I was still not ready. I asked, not ready for what? For what will come later, he answered and laughed as if he had beaten me at the game. Later, he told me, each lineage is seeking its own way to freedom. That is the real goal. To reach it, the Nagual uses all available resources. If it were not for self-importance, following the Nagual would be child's play. All it really takes his love of freedom and willingness to do anything to achieve it. Long after that visit to the Zocalo, Don Melchor took me to the pyramid of Tutulco, which was also in Mexico City. Near the Ciudad Universitaria. As we walked around this magnificent monument, one of the few existing circular pyramids, he told me. This pyramid's intent is dedicated to the warriors of the party of plumed serpent. He said that I had faithfully followed the teachings and that my time had finally come. In his opinion, I was ready for what was to come. And what is it that's coming, Don Melchor? Knowledge is coming, he replied. And knowledge is power. If you manage to flow with the meaning of what I say, power will take you, and it might happen that you'll go on flowing with it, perhaps forever. If that happens, it will be possible for you to embark on your ultimate voyage. He said the place was, for the healers, the most sacred of all places. I asked him why. Because this is where the intent of our ancestors is concentrated. This place is the symbol of our culture. The intent of thousands of sorcerers who had followed the path of the plumed serpent is accumulated here. This is therefore the appropriate place for me to pass on to you the knowledge that you have been waiting for so long. In fact, all the healers of the tradition of the serpent come to this place to receive and transmit that knowledge. It is possible one day you yourself will come here to communicate it to someone else. If you like, you can call this an academic tradition. To achieve their goals, warriors obey the rule of Nagua, which is not a set of laws created by man, but rather structures of power, obeying by means of seeing. When did the rule begin? Who discovered it? The seers of antiquity, seeking to establish order in the chaos they were seeing, agreed it was necessary to organize groups of warriors according to the order that forms the structure of the universe itself. So that was what Don Melchor answered. The seers of antiquity, seeking to establish order in the chaos they were seeing, agreed it was necessary to organize groups of warriors according to the order that forms the structure of the universe itself. Through their seeing, they examine the structure that supports the universe. They discovered that the energy patterns of ego's emanation generate geometric forms that spontaneously bunch together into clusters, which integrate all the elements we perceive as our own world. That's exactly what those groupings of energy are. Energy clusters that we, after a long process of skimming, perceive as the physical world. The seers then copied the design of the structures they saw and established warrior parties based on their visions. For its solidity, the pyramid structure was chosen for warrior parties, which from then on adopted the way of the four cardinal directions. Organized thus, they managed to survive for many thousands of years. As I've already explained, simultaneously with the attempt at pyramid parties, some groups of seers opted for the circular form. Our tradition says that the seers of antiquity saw the structure of the universe was originally circular, or rather, that it was a sphere, the structure of which was maintained by pyramid patterns in such a way that the entire universe with its billions of galaxies was contained within a single gigantic bubble, crisscrossed by myriads of light rays. Those rays intersected and formed an infinite number of pyramidal patterns. After analyzing their visions, the TCs decided not to copy the basic structure of a pyramid, but rather the overall structure of the universe that give existence to all other structures. That was how the first attempts to organize circular warrior parties began. They are actually spherical conglomerates of warriors with the Nagua pair in the center. Those parties are more like bubbles of awareness floating in the eternity. The initial intent of those ancient warriors was to join their extreme points. They became a mystery even to the sorcerers of the pyramids, who were increasingly becoming interested in worldly rule over their peers rather than in the quest for freedom. How were those parties formed? The fundamental structure of the rule for the circular parties demands that minimum number be two, a male and a female, who are the head of the serpent, so to speak. The size of the serpent is relative to the power of the Naguas. As the party grows in number, more rings are added to the body of the rattlesnake. They make up each of the remaining parts: heart, belly, and tail. And depending on the power of the Naguas, even the rattle can be added. The truth is, this party was designed just for the Nagua pair. The others are added, sustained by the energy of the pair. That is the basis of creation, the essence of everything, male and female forever. No other evolutionary form exists. That is the rule. How many warriors make up those parties? As I said, the minimum number is two, but in theory, there is no upper limit to the number of participants. It depends on the power of the Naguas who form the party, but warriors can only be added in pairs. How does this type of party function? The serpent formation is divided lengthwise into halves. The right half is male and the left is female. The rest of the structure is flexible and works in a very natural way. For this type of party, There are no fixed rules like with other structures. Here, everything is governed by omens. Don Melkor joined the thumbs and index fingers of both hands to form two circles, then interchanged the fingers in a circular motion, ending up by forming the symbol for infinity. As he moved his fingers, he said, "Each individual contributes his own energy, thereby helping stabilize the party, adding his qualities to feed the growth of others." The force of Don Melkor's gesture, and even more, the tone of his words, really made me feel what he said. Continuing on with his explanation, Don Melkor says, "As they grew in number, the ancient serpent warriors formed new parties of power, following the same structure from which they had descended. Those who made up the body of the serpent were called families. Each generation of sorcerers was a family, and the succession of families a lineage of power." I asked if anyone seeking knowledge could become part of the Nagual's party. Don Melkor replied, "Nagualism is not for sale. As it was in the past, it's still a matter of omens as to who may or may not participate in a party. There is no rule, however, that prevents anyone from trying. Of course, the challenges of those who attempt to do it by themselves face huge. That is why hardly anyone even tries. But there are those who will risk everything in the race against death. What unites a team of warriors is not only their unbending intent of freedom. Families of sorcerers are also sustained by the affinity between comrades. The purpose of a family of TCs is to transform itself into a unit of pure perception. To achieve this, the Nagual man and Nagual woman change into a line of energy, into a worm of light to which other warriors are added. To join the Nagual pair's intent, those warriors align their assemblage point in a homologous way so that they acquire uniformity and cohesion. Like a chrysalis that has hatched, the warriors transform into a new being the old seers used to call the plumed serpent, a cosmic being that sets off to explore the universe. Thus emerged the rule for circular pyramids, also called the rule of the serpent. Here, the essence of the union between genders is not of sexual nature. The intent is to form a ring of pure perception where male and female energies unite and complete each other. In accordance with the rule, the final act of the Nagual pair is to entwine, forming the eternal circle. At that moment, the warriors who have joined their fate with the Nagual pair are brought together into a circle of energy. In that way, the party disappears finally from this world, their departure creating a force that draws in everything around it. While I was learning the fine points of the cult of Plumed Serpent, Don Melkor took several opportunities to explain those aspects of the rule which pertained to our lineage of warriors. It is very important that you understand the basis of our beliefs if you are to go deeper into them, he told me on one occasion. I replied that I was feeling ready to move my apprenticeship up a step, but he smiled and said only the Spirit could say if I was ready really or not. You must understand that our tradition is governed by the ancestral rule, which we who follow it call the cosmic web. We are, each of us, under obligation to personally contact the rule and learn its intricacies. As you can imagine, over time, communities of warriors formed to pursue the goal of biting one's own tail. They formed the lineage and adopted the circle as the rule for their parties. They even built circular pyramids to express their intent. For them, it was a way of giving themselves an opportunity to attempt the evolutionary leap. Taken as a map, the rule is an intricate set of guidelines and procedures which increase the chances of success in the pursuit of freedom. Established lineage follow the universal rule. The way each party of warriors interprets the detail of the rule or the personal rule of a warrior, those are acts of seeing, accumulated during the lifetime of each participant. Having accepted the rule, the warrior starts exploring for himself, thus validating and expanding the same rule. He usually collects evidence of those aspects of the rule he has verified and shares it with others. Agreement between participants then make up a large portion of the rule for warrior parties. To be part of a party, one must primarily be able to uphold the common intent. And for that, it's necessary that each participant has been in contact with the rule and has accepted its propositions. Who doesn't accept is out. It's that simple. One day, I confronted Don Melchor with some details of the rule that Carlos had described in his books. What can you tell me about the type of warrior party? I asked with great curiosity, remembering how pithy Carlos had been with that information. Don Melchor explained, in an attempt to disobey the ego's command, which says, all living beings without exception must die, the seers organized groups of explorers and examined all the available possibilities. They saw that the command was indeed final, but as they went deeper into the matter, they realized that to die was the transitional stage between this world and the other one, before the complete disintegration of the self and its union with the whole. Let me read this paragraph one more time. Don Melchor explained, in an attempt to disobey the ego's command, which says all living beings without exception must die, The seers organized groups of explorers and examined all the available possibilities. They saw that the command was indeed final, but as they went deeper into the matter, they realized that to die was the transitional stage between this world and the other one, before the complete disintegration of the self and its union with the whole. In the investigations that followed, the seers discovered it was possible to outmaneuver death and keep awareness intact. Recapitulation helps achieve that goal by stimulating memory. As you know, the universe as such is a huge collection memory containing the totality of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. We are like its neurons, or perhaps even less than that. Perhaps one should say a particle orbiting a nucleus. The point is that this little electron, or whatever suddenly gains awareness of itself, in order to know its place in the grand scheme, performs its task so impeccably that it will attain freedom. Let me repeat this part also because it seems important. So recapitulation helps achieve the goal of outmaneuvering death and keep awareness intact by stimulating memory. As you know, the universe as such is a huge collective memory containing the totality of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. We are like its neurons, or perhaps even less than that. Perhaps one should say a particle orbiting a nucleus. My point is that this little electron, or whatever suddenly gains awareness of itself, in order to know its place in the grand scheme, performed its task so impeccably that it attains freedom. Don Melchior laughed at his analogy and said, actually, the most important thing anyone could do was to get busy with the task of recapitulation, because that was what guaranteed the survival of awareness after the end of our organic time. I had always marveled at Don Melchior's erudition. In fact, the healers were very well informed of all the advances in science. Don Gabinetto even received the magazines with news about science. Regarding traditional warrior parties, Don Melchior says, the rule for those parties postulates the pyramid structure, designed so that 4 Paranda Naguals are directed by its square base. The 4 sides are the 4 cardinal directions with the 4 wings associated with them. From that starting point, depending on their interests, the warriors of each pyramid group can draw any kind of interpretation. Could you tell me more about the general rule? I asked. The rule manifests itself in everything that exists. Colors, sound, the sciences, mathematics, geometry, astronomy, genetics, everything. We call modern scientists the discoveries of the rule, because that's what modern science does. It discovers aspects of the universal rule. The rule of the Nagua has diverse portions. Don Melkor went on to list different areas where the rule applied in respect of warrior parties. There are rules for each individual warrior, according to his direction or inclinations. We have already discussed the rule for Naguas. There also exist normative rules for the planet of dreamers and for that of stalkers, for the party as a whole, for the lineage, and finally, the rule is present in each minute aspect of the entire process that has been taking place since the forming of the parties, including the rules for the behavior of warriors. I feel you can replace the word rule with law. Don Melkor seemed to be talking about universal laws and different warrior traditions and groups. What are the rules for warriors' behavior? I asked. Be impeccable, Don Melkor replied. I grumblingly told him that his answer did not explain anything. I had expected a list of things that one should and shouldn't do. Don Melkor recorded, but it does explain things. Impeccability is like a multi-use tool that fits any occasion. For example, between good and excellent, a warrior always chooses what is better. And when he has to choose between a bad egg and a completely rotten one, the warrior always strategically chooses the one which caused the least possible damage. He laughed at his own words and then added, impeccability means always giving the best of yourself, all the time, in everything you do, even when the situation is not the most favorable. I begged him for more details, but he told me I would discover them for myself over time, as my association with the healers meant I had to observe every facet of the rule. This goes into the next section or next story. What is the healer's view on the matter of three-pronged Nagua? I once asked. Don Melkor explained. Three-pronged Naguas are a necessary anomaly within the cycle of the Naguas of the Holy Cross. They appear only rarely, but when one does appear, it is because the cycle his party belongs to is about to fulfill its destiny. What do you mean? Well, according to the rule, all parties have a riddle, just as each warrior receives a task to fulfill as part of his individual path to freedom. Each party and each lineage has its own riddle to solve. A warrior's riddle must be solved in his lifetime, or he'll perish in the attempt. The same goes for a party of warriors. Their opportunity to solve the riddle of their existence will last as long as their time on earth. A party of warriors makes it as a group only if each of its members has been able to solve his or her own riddles. As for deciphering the riddle of a lineage, the lifespan of lineage is 42 generations of warriors' parties. A lineage attains holiness, however, only if all the parties that constitute it achieve their objective. If not, the 42 generation chain breaks and they are obliged to start all over again. So when the lineage is about to reach its peak, a three-pronged Nagual appears, not to continue the lineage as would normally be the case, but to dissolve it, closing a chapter before opening a new one. During that process, the teachings spread out. In the past, such dissemination was extremely dangerous because the Naguals and their parties were hunted down and killed. Now, however, the circumstances are different. Through spreading of formerly secret knowledge, new lineage may arise, restarting the process. I remember that Carlos Castaneda had explained some aspects of his energetic condition. He told everyone that he was a singular case because he was a three-pronged Nagual, not a four-pronged one. He used to say, "I cook on my own fire." He told me once that his teacher, even though he knew that he, Carlos, was inadequate, never said anything. Don Juan did not immediately tell me what he had discovered, because that would have gone against the commands of his own rule. Why? The rule for four-pronged Naguals dictates that they should be informed from the start about their future responsibilities as leaders of the party. They receive this information in both states of awareness. Don Juan, however, only taught me that in heightened awareness. In my normal awareness, he kept me entangled in a tremendous theatrical charade, so it took me many years to remember it all. The Nagual's task, as his party develops, consists in remembering the rule and adapting it to his particular conditions. In other words, a Nagual transforms the general interpretation into an individual one. The rule for three-pronged Naguals, however, works in a different way. How does a three-pronged Nagual integrate into a four-pronged group? I asked. He doesn't. The peculiarity of my energy only allows me to create groups with three sides. I can't do classical parties, the four-pronged ones. Either dissolve them. That is exactly what happened to the party of warriors that Don Juan had put together for me. They were left without a leader to guide them. That is why Don Juan did what he could and took with him the best prepared ones, Eligio, La Soledad, and the Nagual woman. What? I said, confused. I had seen Carol, the Nagual woman, at his last presentation. Oh, Carol was sent back in the hope that she could help the others. But they are really impossible. One can't get anywhere with them. I understood by them Carlos was referring to his old party, composed of the Little Sisters and the Gennaros, and asked, "What are their real chances?" "Everything rests in the hands of the power that governs all things," he said with finality in his voice. "That power speaks through omens, or at least that's how sorcerers understand it." I asked, "If it's so hard for apprentices who were in direct contact with Don Juan, what then are the chances for those who read your books and are interested in following the path of a warrior? Well, sorcerers do not seek disciples. If someone has been announced by an almond as a prospective apprentice, or even more importantly, as a Nagua, his benefactor will spare no effort to help him, thus fulfilling the mandate of duplicating his own group. Once chosen, a prospective Nagua is then trained for years as leader of a regular party of warriors, exactly as in my case. When my energy anomaly became obvious, however, Don Juan and his party went back to the rule for a drastic revision. They discovered what they had on their hands was not totally out of place, since there was a specific rule for my case. On examining the matter more closely, they saw the three-pronged Nagua for what he really was: an alien parasite inadvertently slipping into the lineage and to disintegrate it. Under these conditions, Don Juan did the only thing left to him to do. A warrior always chooses the best option, and if life gives you a lemon, you make lemonade. That's why he designed a strategy for making knowledge public, and thereby closing his lineage with a golden key. That was the only reason for making the achievements of his lineage known. What do you mean by that? Don Juan is directly responsible for the books I wrote. It was he who instructed me to prepare my manuscript as my degree thesis. Don Juan used the established institutions to publicize his message. Following a different course of action would have meant frittering away precious knowledge that had traditionally been kept as top secret for generations. In my case, there was an additional anomaly due to my teacher's somewhat hasty decision to introduce me to what he thought was my group of warriors. Because of that decision, he was forced to redesign the departure strategy of his own party. It had become clear to everyone that the apprentices were doomed and that I was going to be practically alone in this world. Meanwhile, I had failed to demonstrate my worth as three-pronged Nagua, and the only remedy Don Juan found for that was to entrust the continuation of my training to the spirit. In other words, the rule for the three-pronged Nagua was to be communicated to me at some point in the future by a messenger they didn't know yet. So just before leaving, Don Juan told me the essentials of my task. He did it in such a veiled form that it was only years later, when I recapitulated the conversation I had with the messenger, that my teacher's revelations became structured as a coherent line of thought. The pieces of puzzle finally came together, and I could understand the pernicious reason for my presence among them. Why do you say it was a pernicious reason? By saying that, I just followed the course of thoughts of my benefactor and his warriors. For them, sorcery was a strictly controlled activity, regulated by the principles of discretion and strategy. Although they fully belonged to the breed of newsseers, for whom trade secrets weren't worth a peanut, but their activities and emotions to a great extent still belong to the past. For that reason, they would have seen my task as something truly devastating, because it had to do with giving sorcerer to a people. Or rather, bring people to Nagua, and not just in small groups, but in great masses. Of course, for modern seers, there's nothing nefarious about my task. It is a natural occurrence in the flow of energy. They know that times of change need to be faced with renewed spirit. End of part 4.